Hello, welcome, Lotus at Art of Sacred Embodiment. It's another beautiful day out here, taking advantage of this lovely fall weather. Hope this finds you well. So, talking relationships today, talking conscious and sacred partnerships. And what I want to talk about is the difference, first of all, between one of the differences between a karmic relationship is that in a karmic relationship, we're in love with the other person's potential, who we want them to be, who we think they should be, the ways in which they don't feel aligned with us, the ways in which they trigger us, the ways in which, right, they spark all of our fears and anxiety and trust issues. All of our stories kind of come alive when we're in a karmic relationship and we're continuing to project them out rather than put the prism pointing towards the self and saying, oh, this is me. Yes, this may be, my sleeve's all wet, I dribbled water. This may be a relationship that triggers these things, and yet it's still in me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the triggers if I wouldn't have the triggers, or I wouldn't be triggered if I didn't have this story, this belief inside of me to begin with. So there's a way that we tend to try to control the other person in one way, shape, or form. Try to control them or perhaps even us, depending on the side of the spectrum that we're in, that we try to keep ourselves down. We try to stay in line. We don't want to walk on eggshells, that type of thing. So it can go either way. And this is just part of our developmental phases and stages. But one of the reasons I like to bring it up is so that you can actually perhaps identify that, oh, this is the phase and stage that I'm in, and how can I begin to unwind the karmic conditioning and move into a more conscious way of operating. So when we start to move into conscious relationships, sacred partnerships, divine unions, right? There's a full spectrum. I'm not going to go into divine union right now. But when we start to look at these two relationships, what we're starting to do is the other person inspires us. Those differences, perhaps that trigger us, either inspire us to do the inner work and to go, oh yeah, I really want to move through this and grow into the next level of expansion that is right and true for me. Or this person inspires me to not match but become my own version, perhaps, of what that is. What will balance this relationship better? So both people have this view of really seeing the other person in their bigness, in their fullness, and wanting to not only support that, but to be inspired, so that both people are inspiring one another to grow into the highest version of themselves. And there can be a little bit of that topsy-turvy in the beginning, say if you're transitioning from a karmic conditioning perspective into more of a conscious relationship perspective. And I have an example, of course. So So when my ex-husband and I first started seeing each other, one of the things that really drew me to him was that he was super grounded, like really grounded. He had this deep stillness in him. His communication was pretty clear and concise and to the point. Um, there wasn't a lot of explanations needed for things, so to speak. And whenever we would have a conversation, I became super aware of how ungrounded I was at the time. And for a while, I felt really triggered by this. And in this instance, I had sort of that inversion that there was something wrong with me, because he felt like I loved how grounded he was, and he did ground me, right? There was this polar opposite going on, which is good in relationships to have opposites that we can then balance one another. And though he grounded me, I also felt really envious and jealous that I couldn't quite attain that, and that I felt like he was judging my sort of fast everything, right? My fast talking, my fast moving, my facial expressions, like all of this. I was projecting my judgment onto him, that he was judging me, when really this was all me judging me. And because he was so grounded and still, my my air, he was very earth, let's put it that way, and I was very air and very fire. So my air and fire would be amplified. And then the more you know uncomfortable I would get, or be caught in my own judgments I would get, the more anxious I would feel, and the more airy that I would become. So what we didn't know, or I didn't know for a while, is that there were ways in which he then, also felt like, why couldn't he be more spontaneous? Or, you know, um, maybe he was too slow, these type of things. But then he would judge me for that as well, but that was his inner voices as well projecting onto me. So there was sort of this interesting juxtaposition where we both needed to learn, first of all, how to really accept. I'll just speak for myself. How to more fully accept my air and my quickened way about me. And I needed to really like honor that was how I showed up. And simultaneously, I was inspired to learn for my own sense of self how to actually be a little bit more grounded. How could I actually calm my nervous system, right? Tame my responses, not finish his sentences. And he was always so funny about this, right? Because I would jump in and finish a sentence, and he would just very calmly look at me and say, no, that's not what I was going to say. And then I would have to wheel myself back in, and it kind of became a joke after a while, but it was a sensitive spot for me because I was very aware of my quick reactivity, so to speak. So, we didn't really have any big issues. My time of falling in love with the potential of others had sort of long since passed. But I was inspired by what could I learn? about myself and what was my true expression and balance if I really did a deeper reflection on how I operated and I I kept myself so ungrounded, so to speak. So that's just, an example of how we can see our person and recognize that we're always getting these reflections back and forth on how do we most complement one another and by our opposites, and how do we inspire each other to continue to evolve and grow and expand more deeply who we are, and to create a safe container for that to take place. And, sometimes that can also, depending on where we're at in the process, it can feel a little messy. Because when we're in a relationship, right, we are affecting one another. We are having an impact on one another. And so if I'm really working with, say, if I'm really working with wanting to not only deepen my grounding, but maybe deepen my vulnerability, which this was a real phase, deepen my vulnerability within partnership, I, in essence, would need some sort of space held for that safety to explore these more tender realms of myself. However, that is still up to me to create that safety for myself. That even if the space cannot be held at any given time, I don't shrink back and not do my work, but I trust that my inner work is mine to do, and that my partner will do their best to support that when they can. And this is where, when we're doing the deeper work, the deeper intimacy work, and the more expansive work, when we're in conscious and sacred partnerships, we're really coming home to what our truth is. And we're testing that truth, so to speak, with the people that we feel A, the most safe with, and B, the most vulnerable with. So there's a lot of power that comes from consciously engaging within partnership in ways where both people are taking full self-responsibility for where they're at any given time and what their needs are. And yet we're consistently inspiring one another to grow into their fullness. Not because I need him to be any different, but because he or she, however that falls, is on a growing path of their own. And I want them to come into their fullness. So that inspiration, we can get inspired from all sorts of relationships, right? From all, from so many people in our life. And we can choose sometimes to either come into envy or jealousy or insecurity, right? Or feeling that sense of inner lack or inadequacy, which is tethered to a deeper belief that doesn't have anything to do with the other person. It's only being triggered, and a spotlight is being shown on that wounding, right? Or on that kind of tender space, and we feel less than, rather than flipping the script and being like, wow, I'm really inspired. You know, that's a quality that I would love to activate more in myself. And that quality is actually in there, because if it weren't, we wouldn't be drawn to it. We wouldn't have a desire for it. So we're not just trying to go into self-rejection about ourselves. We're actually feeling that inspiration from a way that another person is showing up. Maybe they've mastered, you know, a quality or an outlook on life that we're just starting to grapple with, or to recognize, like, wow, that would really support my way of operating in the world. How do I find that in myself? How do I cultivate it? How do I nurture it? How do I make the choices that create that embodied experience within me? So that way we're not pushing against somebody, we're not pushing people away, and we're not moving into self-judgment. I remember back in, oh my gosh, I think I would have to go back into like high school. My first, my first love. I had so much respect for him and sort of admiration, because again, he was sort of like my ex-husband, or my ex-husband was more like him, whichever way we want to put it. There was this groundedness, there was this practicalness, there was this clarity and clear communication, right? Direct. I've talked about it in different videos. Sometimes maybe a little like, whoa, that was really clear. And there was this groundedness that, once again, I had a very activated, energetic disposition. I still do in a lot of ways. But I was sort of this untethered being, right? I was a rebel. I was a little out of control. Looking back, I realized, I was an indigo child. I was a star seed. So I definitely had some things that I was not going to conform to. I was not going to fit into any molds, so to speak. But I really, really was inspired by him to want to be more responsible, want to be more accountable, want to be more grounded in the physical world. I wanted to get better grades, right? I wanted to go to school. So he didn't necessarily have these expectations of me, but just how much I appreciated him. These were ways that in my background and in my family, these were qualities that weren't very ingrained, because I had hippie, unconventional, non-conforming parents. So some of the more conventional ways I was longing for, right? I was like, I was yearning for that kind of stability. And at that point, I realized unconsciously that I could give that to myself. But I kind of was relying on him at that point in time to mirror that for me. And to become more active in those qualities, because he was reflecting them to me. And what an amazing gift that was, right? Now karma kicked in, right, after that was gone, and I sort of, in the right alignment for my life, had to go through refinding those ways of being much later down the road. But I always knew that that was something that was really important to me, and that I needed to give that to myself. And later on in life, I came home to that, right? I came home to that awareness. I didn't need somebody to be that for me, right? I didn't need to find a partner who was going to fulfill that, or who I was going to hold on to my ways and maybe be judgmental about, or reject those things. I knew that in my right timing, I would need and would activate those qualities within me. And, so when we're coming into higher level partnerships, right? Higher level just means more expanded consciousness. We're operating from a very different blueprint. And as we move from conscious relationships into sacred partnerships, we're continuing to activate even more expansive points of view, expansive perceptions, expansive qualities and ways of being that we're embodying from a very deep level of alignment with Source, alignment with our soul presence. And whenever we're coming into a new relationship, as we continue to move through this spectrum, we're going to attract and invite those people in who are mirroring to us our own inspiration, right? And we to them. We're not coming into these higher partnerships to merge and match 100%, right? But instead to balance and harmonize, and to consistently be finding these ways of refining, right, those harmonizations through inspiration, not through pain and suffering. Pain and suffering has long fallen away by the time we're entering into the sacred partnership and divine unions. And there's a lot less turnover, so to speak, in partnership as well. The more healed we become, the more our deeper signature, our frequency is activated, and it has a match, right? And it doesn't mean that there won't be things that, that when we come into a partnership with somebody else, that, whoa, okay, they really are needing to, work with one thing, which is why they're coming to us, and we're really needing to work with something else, which is why we're being drawn to them. So in karmic relationships, we're drawn to each other to heal our wounds and our suffering. So they tend to be more painful, they tend to have more drama, they tend to have more cycles, right, of discord and power struggles and self-rejection, judgment, other rejection, abandonment issues, all of that. We come together and for that purpose. And then we go through relationships more quickly, so to speak, and we're attracted to people more often. Okay, so this is a really interesting thing about the spiritual journey and relationships. We're attracted to more people easier because we're running on karmic templates and wounding templates. The more healed that we become, we're not attracted in that way to as many people as often, because we're not looking from the outside to get deep needs met, and we're not looking to heal from the outside of us anymore. So many of us, choose to be alone rather than step into something that doesn't fit. Because if I were choosing to step into something that doesn't fit, there would be some kind of karma operating there. But at a more expanded consciousness phase, we choose to be alone until the right fit comes, until the right alignment comes, until that right aligned values, perspectives, spiritual connection, understanding comes. And it doesn't mean that there won't be blind spots that we need this other person to support our next level of growth and transformation in. And so then we access that through inspiration. We access that through, oh my gosh, thank you so much for, bringing this into my life, shining a light on this into my life so that I can evolve more fully into my next level. And this will often work for the other person, right? So we both have qualities, we both have gifts, we both have these jewels that we want to share with one another. And we may not know what those jewels are until we create that friendship, right? And oftentimes we don't hop in to karmic fast, base level interactions, right? Meaning chemistry that's overpowering and the sex is really good, so it must be right. And that's just a karmic stage, and that's fine, right? And that might develop into something, it might not. But what I'm saying is, when we're in these higher levels of consciousness, the attraction is subtler, it's deeper. The friendship, the connection based on really wanting to know the other person for who they are, not for what I can get from them or they can get from me. No potential, no taking and giving. But it becomes two souls coming together because there's something deep within that is wanting to be lit up with love, lit up through exploration, lit up so that we can know ourselves better and know one another better. So there's a lot of nuances right through all of these stages and phases. And when we can really acknowledge and embody where we're at with conscious awareness, we can move through all of these stages and phases so much quicker. Because really, it's just all about us. It's all about our growth, our healing. And it depends on how we do that with another person. And then when we move into these higher, more expanded relationship states, we're not healing anymore. We're evolving more. We're growing through joy and commitment and vulnerability and faith and trust in deeper ways. And we're able and we're willing to walk into those edges that might feel a little bit uncomfortable without the fears. There might still be fears carry over, like, oh my gosh, will they still love me, whatever that is. But we know automatically, like, oh, okay, that's my fear talking. That's my feelings of inadequacy talking. I still move to the edge because this is my inner work to do. And we can hold the space for our partner moving to the edge because that's their inner work to do. And neither of us have to take on the others or have expectations that they take on our stuff or meet our needs in the old way. Needs become very different in these higher consciousness spaces, and that's kind of a different nuanced conversation. So let's just wind this back, right? The invitation is keep moving, keep expanding, keep doing, right? Your inner work. Keep flourishing and thriving within yourself so that then you attract those people who are going to inspire you. And this can be all people, all, our tribe, our community changes as we grow as well. So karmically, sorry, I'm going on another little segue here. Karmically, we're going to attract friends and situations and, people in our lives, a community that are going to reflect where we're at. So just know that wherever we're at, when I was in AA, right, it was very intense. It was very karmic processing. It was a lot of emotion. It was a lot of messiness here and there, right? It was a lot of people working through their stuff, but they were consciously doing it. But as we move into different situations, right, more conscious communities, then we're operating from that way. So we're attracting and we're bonding with people who are operating at that level of consciousness. And then when we move into these higher levels of consciousness, not only are we inspired then by what we can learn and grow from the reflections of our partners, but people around us, we get inspired by our community. We get inspired to from watching them grow and evolve without comparisons, without needing to be the same, but by honoring our differences and honoring the reflections that we're getting back and feeling honored by all of that. So flourish and thrive, shine your light, your signature will attract those right people to you. And know that when it comes to these higher partnerships, if there's something there, no one is better or more on it than the other, right? We each are going to have our things. And so we just may not know that, what those offerings are, right? What those shares are, what those inspirations are, until we start the friendship, where we start revealing ourselves and receiving the other and creating that space to learn and grow and allow what is divinely aligned out of that. So where are you at, right? You just be clear without any judgment, without any comparison. You just be clear. Where are you at? Where are you operating? This then will allow you to set on your track consciously and to up-level your consciousness if you're already in a conscious relationship, right? These are the phases and stages that we just get to keep going through. So I want to celebrate that with you wherever you're at. Celebrate all that you are and all that you are showing up as and for, and know that it will continue to get better, to get lighter, to get freer, to get more joyful, to have more beauty, all of that, to have more love. All right, be well.